Every world hides its secrets, and some beings belong to more than one. I am born of two worlds where science meets spirituality and reality collides with imagination. Welcome to the space between worlds. The night was quiet in the small town of Red Willow. Only the hum of streetlights and the soft bark of a dog broke the silence. Inside a small clinic at the edge of town, Dr. Mason Hale, a local veterinarian, was finishing his last shift. The smell of medicine and fur hung in the air. He rubbed his tired eyes, yawning as the clock struck midnight. Another long day, another lonely night. Mason lived for his work. Animals didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't judge. They only needed help, and he was always there to give it. But tonight, something felt wrong. The wind outside carried a strange sound, a deep vibration that made the windows tremble. At first, Mason thought it was thunder. But when he stepped outside, the sky was clear, filled with stars. Then a flash of green light tore across the sky like a silent scream. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a meteor. It was something else. The light streaked down behind the forest near the old quarry, followed by a low rumble that shook the ground. Mason's heart began to pound. Curiosity battled fear. Probably a satellite, he whispered to himself, locking the clinic door. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. He grabbed his flashlight and drove toward the forest in his old pickup truck. The roads were empty, and the glow in the sky was still faintly pulsing. As he reached the trees, the engine coughed and died. Static filled the radio. Everything went dark. He stepped out. The forest was silent, no crickets, no owls, no wind, just silence and the faint smell of something burning. He followed the smell until he saw it, a massive metallic pod, half buried in the dirt, smoke rising from its sides. The surface shimmered like liquid steel. Symbols glowed faintly on its hull, not human symbols. Mason froze, his breath caught in his throat. No way, this can't be real. Then he heard it, a low sound, half growl, half whisper. A shadow moved inside the smoke. Slowly, a figure crawled out. It was tall, scaled, and shining under the moonlight. Its body was wounded, glowing green blood leaked from deep cuts. The creature's eyes were like gold fire watching him. Mason stumbled back. His flashlight fell to the ground. The creature tried to stand but collapsed with a heavy thud. It reached toward him with a trembling, clawed hand, and then a voice echoed inside his head. "Help me, human." Mason gasped. The creature hadn't spoken, its mouth never moved, yet the voice was clear, desperate, almost afraid. He took a step forward, shaking. "You can talk, not talk, think." The voice was weak, fading. "I am the queen." "Queen?" Mason blinked in confusion. "Queen of what?" No answer. The creature's head dropped, body twitching in pain. Mason looked around. The forest was too quiet. No one else was here. He knew what any sane man would do: run, call the police, tell someone. But something inside him, that old instinct to help a creature in pain, wouldn't let him leave. He took off his jacket and pressed it against one of the glowing wounds. The blood hissed like acid but didn't burn his skin. "Stay with me," he whispered. "I'll help you." The voice flickered again in his mind. "If I die, your world burns next." Mason's hands froze. The words made no sense, but the fear in her voice felt real. He pulled her arm around his shoulder and dragged her toward his truck. She was heavy, far heavier than any human, but he kept going. Sweat rolled down his face as he lifted her into the back seat. He turned the key, the truck started as if nothing had happened. As he drove back to the clinic, he glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Her breathing was slow, shallow. Her scales flickered with faint light, like dying stars. Inside the clinic, Mason cleared a table and switched on every lamp. He locked the doors and closed the blinds. If anyone saw this, he'd be ruined, but he didn't care. He began to clean her wounds. Her blood was thick and luminous. Her skin was like armor, yet cracked in places. He used what tools he had, scalpels, disinfectant, bandages, but it wasn't enough. Still, he kept working, whispering softly. "You're gonna be okay, I got you." Minutes felt like hours. Then her eyes opened again, those golden eyes staring right into his soul. "You are foolish, human." He jumped. "You're welcome," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The queen tilted her head slightly like she didn't understand his words. Then her eyelids fluttered and she went still again. Mason sat down, exhausted. His hands were trembling. "What the hell did I just do?" he whispered. Outside, the night had grown darker. Clouds covered the stars. And far above the earth, something else moved among the clouds, dark shapes, silent and watching. In the distance, a military drone scanned the forest ruins, picking up strange heat signatures. A voice crackled on a hidden radio frequency. "Target has landed. Proceed with recovery. No witnesses." Back in the clinic, Mason didn't know that by saving her, he had just made the most dangerous decision of his life. And the queen he saved, she wasn't just any alien. She was the key to something far greater and far deadlier. As he looked at her sleeping form, her chest glowing faintly with every breath, Mason felt an emotion he couldn't explain: pity and fear. Somewhere deep inside him, he already knew this was no accident. This was the beginning. Next part, more you continue, Ike. Rain still whispered against the windows of the small clinic. The sound mixed with the soft hum coming from the creature, the queen, as her body continued to heal. The faint green glow beneath her scales filled the dark room with strange light. Dr. Mason Reed stood near the counter, still shaking from the visit of the two agents. His hands were trembling slightly as he poured himself a glass of water. He had lied to government officers. For an alien. He still couldn't believe what he had done. The queen was watching him, golden eyes steady and calm. She stood tall now, her body fully recovered, her movements slow and graceful like a predator that knew its power. "You are afraid," she said in his mind. Mason sighed. "Of course I'm afraid. You fell from the sky, those men are probably military, and I just helped an alien queen escape from them." The queen tilted her head. "Then why do you stay?" He looked at her and shrugged weakly. "Because I started something. I can't walk away now." For the first time, her lips curved slightly. It wasn't a human smile, but it was close. The air inside the clinic felt heavier now, not dangerous, but charged with energy. Mason could hear faint sounds, almost like whispers, coming from her, though her mouth never moved. He finally asked, "How are you speaking to me? You're not even talking." "Your mind receives," she said. "My kind does not use sound for truth. Words hide meaning. Thought does not." Mason blinked. "So you can read minds?" "Only when allowed," she answered simply. He frowned. "And you're not reading mine, are you?" She looked at him for a moment. "You fear failure, you hide sadness behind duty, you are lonely." Mason's eyes widened. "That's not fair." "You asked," she replied calmly. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Great, saved an alien telepath. What's next?" The queen moved closer to the window, her scales reflecting the soft blue light of the storm outside. "Your world hides much," she said. "We came to speak, not to fight." Mason's attention sharpened. There are more of you. There were 3 ships. Only mine reached the ground, the others." Her voice grew faint for a moment, as if remembering pain. "They were destroyed by your kind soldiers from your high-orbit defense." Mason stared at her, stunned. "Wait, you're saying humans attacked you?" "Yes, but not all humans. Some of you knew we were coming to offer peace. They feared what peace would bring." Her golden eyes turned to him. "Fear makes humans dangerous, but it also makes them strong." Mason didn't know what to say. He felt his throat tighten. "If what you're saying is true, then they'll come for you again, and me." "They already are," she said simply. Outside, lightning flashed, and for a moment Mason thought he saw shadows moving near the forest line again. He tried to convince himself it was the wind. The queen turned away from the window and looked back at him. "You cannot stay here. They will return with machines that see through walls. I must leave before sunrise." Mason nodded, though his heart sank. "You can barely walk. How are you going to leave?" She raised a clawed hand, and a small spark of light formed in her palm, swirling like liquid fire. "My power returns, slowly. Your medicine helped my body. Your kindness helped my mind." Mason stared, amazed. "You can do that?" The light flickered brighter, casting strange patterns on the walls. This is energy from my world. It answers thought, it shapes matter, but now it is weak. I must reach my beacon before they find me. He stepped closer. Then let me help. You have done enough, she said firmly. If they see you with me, they will destroy you too. Mason crossed his arms. I'm already part of this. You said my world will burn if you die. I can't just pretend I didn't hear that. For a moment she said nothing. Her eyes seemed to search him again, deep, unreadable. Then she spoke softly. You remind me of someone I once knew, long ago, before war touched the stars. Mason raised an eyebrow. Another foolish human. Her eyes glowed faintly. No, a warrior, but his heart was human. The clinic lights flickered again, this time more violently. Mason looked up. What's happening? They are scanning this area, she said. Machines from your kind. Outside, a distant hum began, like drones flying low over the trees. Mason's pulse quickened. We need to hide now. No, the queen said quietly. I will not hide again. Her body straightened, her scales darkening to deep bronze. The air vibrated with power. The glow from her wound turned into a bright white line across her chest. Mason, she said, do not fear what you see. Then she raised both hands, and the energy in the room exploded, lights shattering, glass shaking, metal bending. Through the window, Mason saw the trees outside bending away from the building as if pushed by invisible wind. The drones in the distance dropped from the sky, burning silently before hitting the ground. When it was over, the clinic was quiet again. Smoke curled from broken lamps. The queen lowered her hands. The light around her faded. Mason stood speechless, his mind struggling to understand what he had just seen. She looked at him, tired but strong. Now you understand, human, what you saved was not only a life. She turned toward the window again, her voice softer. You saved a promise. Mason swallowed hard. A promise of what? Of peace, if your world still deserves it. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but somewhere far above the clouds, something else was moving again, answering her call. The storm outside began to fade. Broken glass covered the clinic floor, and smoke drifted lazily in the air. The smell of burnt metal and ozone filled the room. Doctor. Mason Reed stood near the shattered window, staring at the queen in disbelief. He had just watched her destroy flying machines without touching them. She looked weaker now, her glow dimmer, her breath heavy. Still, her presence filled the room like quiet thunder. Mason finally spoke. You could do that all along. The queen turned slowly, her golden eyes calm. Not before. Your medicine, it woke my strength, but it drains me. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You said I saved a promise. What did you mean? She was silent for a moment, as if listening to something far away. Then she raised her hand. A small sphere of light appeared above her palm, spinning slowly. This is memory, she said. Our way of truth. The light grew brighter until it filled the whole room. Mason blinked as strange images flooded his mind, cities of shining towers floating in the clouds, reptilian beings walking beside humans in peace, ships gliding through stars. It was beautiful. But then the scene changed. Fire, war, human ships attacking, explosions tearing through the sky. We came to your world in peace, her voice echoed. To share knowledge, to heal both our kinds, but your leaders feared us, they called us conquerors, they struck first. Mason gasped. That's impossible, no one ever said anything about aliens. The queen looked at him sadly, because they erased it. They hid the truth from your people, they created stories of meteors, of weather balloons, of lies. He shook his head. You're saying the same people who attacked you are still in power. Yes, she whispered. And they will not stop. They want our technology, our energy. They call it control. We call it corruption. Mason sat down heavily on a chair, trying to breathe. The world he knew, his quiet little life, suddenly felt fake. So all of this started because humans couldn't trust anyone different. Fear blinds, she said softly. But you, human, you saw pain and chose to heal. That is why I live. Her tone carried no anger, only deep sadness. Outside, the wind pushed against the window frame. Mason stood and looked out into the dark. He could still see the wreckage in the distant forest glowing faintly under the rain. He turned back to her. "If what you're saying is true, then they'll never let you leave. You're proof that they lied." "That is why I must reach my beacon," she said. "My people will come if they know I am alive, but the signal is far 10 of your miles." Mason frowned. "That's suicide. Roads are watched. Cameras everywhere." The Queen's eyes met his. "Then I will walk the shadows." Her voice sounded determined, but her body trembled slightly. She wasn't as strong as before. Mason noticed and stepped forward. "You're not walking anywhere in this condition. I'll drive you." "If they catch you—" "I know," he interrupted. "But I've already crossed that line, haven't I?" She stared at him, her expression unreadable. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "Very well, we move before dawn." Hours passed. Mason cleaned what he could: broken lights, spilled medicine, shattered glass. The clinic looked more like a battlefield than a hospital. As he worked, he found something lying near the door, a small black card. One of the agents must have dropped it earlier. He picked it up. It had no name, only a symbol, a silver triangle with a single eye in the middle and 3 letters beneath it, ADR. Mason frowned. He turned the card over. There was a faint imprint, coordinates, and a date. It was tomorrow. "What is this?" he muttered. The Queen looked up from the table. "That mark belongs to those who hunt me, the humans in black suits." Mason stared at the card again. ADR, what does it stand for? The Queen's eyes darkened. Alliance for Defense and Recovery. They claim to protect your world. In truth, they collect what is not theirs. Her tone sharpened, anger flashing for the first time. "They took our wounded when we first made contact, experimented, killed. Their leader made promises of peace and broke everyone." Mason clenched his jaw. "That's horrible. Who's their leader?" She hesitated, her eyes softened. "His name is unknown to most, but in your language he is called Dr. Elias Reed." Mason froze. The name hit him like a punch. "Reed," he whispered. "That's my father's name." The Queen looked at him carefully. "You share blood." He stepped back, shaking his head. "No, it can't be. My father died 15 years ago." "Perhaps that is what they told you," she said quietly. "The ones who hide truth can also hide death." Mason's mind raced. His chest felt tight. "You think my father was part of this group?" "I do not think," she said. "I know. His name was spoken before the first shot was fired at our ships." The room went silent. Only the sound of rain filled the air again. Mason stared at the floor, his heart beating too fast. Everything inside him twisted: confusion, anger, disbelief. The Queen stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Now you see why you were meant to find me. The past is not finished with you, human." He looked up slowly, eyes filled with stormlight. "I'm going to find out the truth," he said. "About my father, about them, about you." The Queen nodded. "Then we begin when the sun rises." Outside, lightning struck again, lighting up the forest. And for a brief second, Mason thought he saw a dark figure standing among the trees, watching. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy. The forest behind the clinic looked calm under the pale light of dawn, but Mason knew peace was an illusion. Inside, the Queen stood near the door, watching the horizon through the blinds. Her eyes glowed faintly golden again, though her body still looked weak. "Doctor." Mason Reed packed a small bag, medical tools, water, a flashlight, and his father's old revolver. He never thought he would need it. "We leave now," the Queen said quietly. "They are already moving." Mason frowned. "How do you know?" "I can feel their signal. They search for my energy." He nodded, trying to steady his nerves. "Then let's go before they find it." They stepped outside. The morning mist hung low, curling around the trees like ghosts. The world felt quiet, too quiet. Mason opened the door of his old pickup truck. The Queen hesitated before getting in. The vehicle was small for her, but she folded herself gracefully, covering her body with a long cloak Mason had given her. He started the engine. It coughed twice before coming to life. "Come on, old friend," he whispered to the truck. "Don't die on me now." As they drove down the muddy path, Mason glanced at her. She was staring out the window, her eyes distant. "You've seen more worlds than I can imagine," he said softly. "Is Earth really worth saving?" For a moment she didn't answer. Then in that calm voice that filled his head she said, "Your world is young, violent, but it dreams. Dreams can grow into peace or into fire. Which path it takes depends on humans like you." Mason didn't know what to say. Her words felt heavier than the morning fog. They reached the edge of the forest road. Mason slowed down. Up ahead, two black SUVs were parked near a dirt intersection. Men in dark armor stood beside them, holding scanners that glowed faint blue. "Damn it," Mason muttered. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "They follow my trail." Mason turned the wheel, taking a smaller side path. Branches scratched the truck, mud splashed up the windows. His heart pounded. Behind them, engines roared to life. "They've seen us," he shouted. Bullets hit the back of the truck. The metal rang like a bell. Mason ducked instinctively. The Queen's eyes blazed gold. "Drive. Do not stop." She raised her hand and the air around the truck shimmered. A sound like cracking thunder filled the forest. One of the black SUVs behind them suddenly flipped over, crushed by invisible force. "Holy," Mason gasped. "You could have told me before doing that." "No time," she replied. "More coming." Another vehicle appeared from a side road ahead. Mason gritted his teeth and pressed harder on the gas. The truck jumped over a bump, nearly losing control. "Hold on," he shouted. The Queen extended her claws. The air shimmered again. The ground in front of the chasing car exploded in a flash of white light. The road split open, swallowing the vehicle whole. Mason's truck swerved onto the main road. Trees blurred past as they finally broke free of the forest. After a few miles, Mason slowed down, gasping for breath. "I think we lost them." The Queen closed her eyes, focusing. "No, their signal fades but not gone. They will follow again." Mason hit the steering wheel. "Who are these people? Why are they doing this?" "They serve the one called Reed," she said softly. He looked at her sharply. "You mean my father?" She nodded. "He is alive. He leads them." Mason felt cold all over. His hands trembled on the wheel. "You're wrong. He died in an accident. I buried him." "Then they buried someone else," she replied simply. He shook his head. "That's insane." "So is truth," she said. Mason stayed silent, his mind spinning. Everything he believed about his family, his world, all cracking apart. The truck rattled as it entered an abandoned industrial area on the outskirts of town. Rusted buildings and empty warehouses lined the road. Mason pulled inside one and parked. He turned to her. "We can hide here for a while, figure out the next step." The Queen nodded. "I must reach the beacon soon. My people wait for the signal." Mason looked out the windshield. The sky was getting brighter, streaks of orange touching the clouds. "Then we rest for an hour. You need strength." "And you need clarity," she said. He frowned. "Clarity." The Queen reached toward him, her clawed fingers glowing faintly blue. Before he could move, she touched his forehead lightly. A shock of energy shot through him, images, voices, memories he didn't know he had. He saw his father in a dark room, surrounded by men in black coats. Father speaking into a camera. "Project ADR has begun. The Queen must not reach the surface." Mason gasped and stumbled back. "No, that's not possible." "Now you know," the Queen whispered. "The blood that hunts me is the same blood that saved me." Mason covered his face with shaking hands. "My father started all this, and you human will finish it," she said. He looked at her, fear and anger mixing in his eyes. "Then tell me how." "By reaching the beacon, by showing your world the truth." Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying the sound of engines in the distance. Mason turned the key, starting the truck once more. "Then let's end this," he said. The Queen's eyes glowed brighter. "Then prepare, human, the chase has only begun." As they drove off, the rising sun painted the sky red, the color of both dawn and war. The dawn wind carried the smell of wet earth and metal. Behind the small clinic, the forest steamed after the long night of rain. Dr. Mason Reed tightened the straps on a travel bag, medicine, water, food, and a few tools. The alien queen stood by the door, wrapped in a blanket that could barely hide her scales. "We must move," she said in his mind. "They have found my signal." Mason glanced at her pale, glowing eyes. "Then we run." Escape, the truck coughed to life. They rolled down the muddy track, leaving the clinic behind. The Queen sat still, watching the trees slide past. Her presence filled the cab like quiet thunder. "You could have left alone," Mason said. "Why bring me into this?" "Because you chose to help," she answered. "Fate rewards those who act, not those who hide." He managed a weak laugh. Fate's got a cruel sense of humor. The trap. As the forest thinned, Mason saw dark shapes ahead, 2 black SUVs across the road. Men in armor held scanners that glowed blue. "Agents," he whispered. "Drive," the Queen ordered. He spun the wheel, turning onto a dirt path. Branches whipped across the windshield. Behind them, engines roared to life. Bullets cracked through the air. One hit the rear mirror, glass exploded. Mason ducked. "They're shooting at us." The Queen raised a hand. The air shimmered like heat over a desert. A wave of pressure burst outward, trees bent, dust flew. Behind them, one SUV flipped end over end and crashed in flames. Mason gripped the wheel tighter. "Remind me never to make you angry." "Then drive faster," she said. Pursuit. The path curved sharply. Another vehicle blocked the way. Mason braked hard. The truck skidded. Before the agents could fire, the Queen lifted both hands. The ground cracked open beneath the car, swallowing it whole. "Okay," Mason muttered, heart pounding. "You win. You're driving next time." "I do not know how," she said simply. He laughed once, short and nervous, and kept going until the forest opened onto a long highway. The truth returns after several miles. The sound of pursuit faded. Mason slowed down, breathing hard. The Queen leaned back, eyes closed. "They will follow again," she murmured. "Your people never stop hunting." He looked at her. "You keep saying my people like I'm not one of them." "You are different," she said. "Your heart chooses mercy." Mason shook his head. "Maybe I'm just stupid." Foolishness and courage share the same seed. Refuge. An abandoned warehouse stood near the edge of town, half collapsed and covered in ivy. Mason drove inside and shut the gate. "We can rest here," he said. "They won't find us for a while." The Queen moved to a corner, her body glowing softly in the dim light. "The beacon lies 10 miles east," she said. "We must reach it before nightfall." Mason nodded. "Then we rest for an hour." The revelation. As he checked his supplies, something fell from his jacket pocket. A small black card with a silver triangle and 3 letters. "ADR," he frowned. "Found this near the clinic. You recognize it?" The Queen's gaze darkened. "Alliance for Defense and Recovery, the Hunters." Mason turned the card over. Coordinates were engraved on the back. He read the numbers aloud. The Queen's voice grew cold. "That is their base. The one who leads them was called Reed." Mason froze. "Read my father's name." "He commanded the attack on our ships," she said. "He lives." Mason's throat tightened. "No, my father died when I was 15. I saw the coffin." "Then they buried lies." His hands shook. "You're telling me my father started this war. His work did. His blood continues it, and now you carry the choice to end it." He looked away, heart pounding. "Why me?" "Because the same name that built the fire can bring peace." Vision. Before he could reply, she reached out and touched his forehead. A flash of light, images flooded his mind. A dark room, screens, soldiers, his father's voice. "Project ADR active. Terminate contact with the reptilian envoy." Mason gasped and stumbled back. "That was him, my father. You have seen the truth," the Queen said. "Your past hunts your present." He leaned against the truck, breathing fast. "Then I'll finish what he started, only right this time." "Then we go," she said. "The chase is not done." Engines rumbled again outside, distant but closing. Mason climbed into the driver's seat, jaw tight. "Hold on." The Queen's eyes burned bright gold. "I am ready." The truck roared forward into the rising sun, dust trailing behind like smoke from a new war. The desert night was still. The air shimmered with heat left from the day, and the only sound came from Mason's truck climbing a narrow ridge. Far below, the ruins of an old observatory stood half buried in sand, the place the Queen had called the beacon. Dr. Mason Reed stopped the truck and looked at her. She sat quietly in the seat beside him, scales faintly glowing silver now instead of green. She looked stronger, but there was sorrow in her eyes. "This is it," he said softly. "End of the road, or beginning," she answered. "The signal sleeps here, I must wake it." They stepped out. The wind carried dust across the rocks. Mason followed her down a cracked stairway into the dome's heart. Broken telescopes and rusted machines filled the dark space. At the center stood a stone ring covered in alien symbols that pulsed faint blue when she approached. The beacon, the queen placed her clawed hand on the ring. A deep hum filled the air, the ground trembled. Light flowed from the carvings, racing up the walls and into the open sky. Mason shielded his eyes. "You did it." "Not yet," she said. "Beacon calls, but it must be guided. My energy is not enough." Before he could ask, alarms echoed outside, metal engines approaching fast. Headlights appeared along the ridge. Adder, Mason breathed. "They found us." The queen turned, her eyes fierce again. "They come for both of us now." The assault black drones poured from the vehicles like a swarm of hornets. Searchlights cut through the dark. A loudspeaker boomed. "This is ADR command. Step away from the alien. Dr. Reed, surrender." Mason's heart froze. The voice was familiar, steady, calm, and impossible. It was his father's voice. He stepped forward, shouting, "Dad, you're alive." A man stepped out of the largest truck, older, hair gray, eyes hard. "Yes, son," he said. "Alive because I stayed loyal to Earth. Step aside. That creature nearly destroyed us once. I won't let it happen again." Mason shook his head. "She came in peace. You shot her down. Peace." His father snapped. "They wanted to share power, to change what we are. Humans must stay in control." Behind Mason, the queen raised her hands. The beacon flared brighter. "Control is an illusion," she said. "Harmony was our offer. You answered with fire." The ADR soldiers raised their weapons. The choice. Mason looked from his father to the queen. Two worlds, two truths. One demanded obedience, the other trust. "Dad, stop this," he pleaded. "You don't see what's happening. If she dies, everything dies. If she lives," his father said coldly, "we become slaves." The first shot rang out. Mason moved without thinking, throwing himself between the queen and the soldiers. Pain seared through his shoulder. He fell to one knee. The queen caught him before he hit the ground. Her hands glowed white. "Human, why?" He coughed a weak laugh. "Because I finally know what's right." She turned toward the soldiers. Her voice shook the air. "Enough." The ground erupted with light. Weapons melted, drones crashed, engines exploded in silence. The soldiers dropped to the sand, unharmed but frozen in shock. Only one man remained standing, Mason's father, staring in disbelief. "You could kill us," he whispered. "I could," the queen said, "but he showed me mercy. I return it." She lowered Mason gently to the ground and placed her hand over his wound. Warmth spread through him. The pain faded. When he looked down, the bullet hole was gone. "What did you?" "Healed," she said simply. "A gift for your courage." Farewell. The beacon's light reached its peak. High above, the clouds parted as a massive shape descended from the stars, a ship of shining silver, silent and graceful. Wind roared around them. Soldiers shielded their faces. The queen looked at Mason one last time. "Your world will remember this day as the day it almost lost itself. Do not let fear rule again." She pulled a single silver scale from her armor and placed it in his hand. "If ever darkness rises, burn this. I will hear." He swallowed hard. "Will I see you again?" Her eyes softened. "When your world is ready for peace." With that, she stepped into the beam of light. The ship rose higher, brighter, until it vanished among the stars. Aftermath silence returned to the desert. The ADR soldiers lowered their weapons, confused and afraid. Dr. Elias Reed, the father, stared at the sky, trembling. Then he looked at his son. "I wanted to protect humanity," he whispered. Mason met his gaze. "You almost destroyed it." His father said nothing. He turned and walked into the darkness, swallowed by the night. Mason stood alone by the beacon, holding the queen's silver scale. It shimmered softly, alive with hidden light. He looked up at the endless sky and whispered, maybe being human isn't foolish after all. The dawn broke, painting the horizon gold. And for a brief moment, he thought he heard her voice again. Thank you, human. Milky Way end of story. Foolish human vet agreed to treat the alien queen reptile but didn't know it would thank him HFY. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, share your thoughts below and subscribe to become part of this story. This is born of two worlds where reality ends and imagination begins.